Our foundation stones. Many things have been said in esoteric literature and the Gospels about what we are and what it should be based upon, so in this regard we need to think about what can be taken away from us by life. We all understand that if we are based upon someone else, and completely identified, then this basis can be taken away from us, and we will be unable to remember ourselves. Yet again, if we are based on our property, our possessions, our position, our money, our reputation, our past, our appearance and so on, then all of this can be taken away from us through calamity, and then we will experience a total loss of ourselves, perhaps even feeling broken in spirit or suicidal, if our chief basis lies upon such things that are not who we really are. There is, however, one thing that can never be taken from us, and that is our understanding. If we have reached a point in this work, which is the only thing that gives understanding in any real sense, then we will be able to stand the loss of many external personal things. Remember the parable about catching hold of a rope. If we find this rope in our own way, which everyone in this work must do, then we are being held fast by something quite distinct from life and its vicissitudes. This is really called having a point in the work, the anchor to which we tether ourselves. Other people can fail us, disappoint and so on. External life may assume very unpleasant forms, yet we are held fast by something beyond life, by some new force. Remember parables in the Gospels about what a person is based upon. For example, the parable where Christ speaks of the foundation upon which someone builds their house, saying, "Everyone therefore which heareth these words of mine and doeth them, shall be likened unto a wise man, which built his house upon the rock. And then the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon the rock. And every one that heareth these words of mine, and doeth them not, shall be likened unto a foolish man, which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and smote upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall thereof." See Matthew, chapter 7, verses 24 to 27. Then there is the parable about the man who stored up wealth in barns. Christ says, "The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully, and he reasoned within himself, saying, What shall I do, because I have nowhere to bestow my fruits? And he said, This will I do, I will pull down my barns, and build greater, and there will I bestow all my corn and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years, take thine ease, eat, drink and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou foolish one, this night is thy soul required of thee, and the things which thou hast prepared, whose shall they be? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich towards God." See Luke, chapter 12, verses 16 to 21. Here God is contrasted with my or mine. Gurdjieff once gave a talk in France about what could be taken away from us. Understand that if we are based upon false personality, we are standing on a basis that will give us constant trouble with regard to keeping our balance. Gurdjieff said that a man could be compared with an apartment containing 3 rooms. He spoke for some time about this 3-room apartment, about everything that was in disorder within it, how the utensils were in the wrong place, the furniture in the wrong rooms and so on. Then he went on to say how a man was always in debt, always insolvent, always liable to be summoned, however much money he possessed. Of course we must understand that he was speaking of man's insolvency in a particular way, in the way that man is spoken of so often in some of the parables, as for example, the parable of the servant, which represents us, who owes his master many millions of talents. Gurdjieff said the bailiffs may enter our apartment at any moment, and they have the legal right to take away everything except our bed, which is in the inner or 3rd room. So reflect upon what you rest on most internally, as that is something which cannot be taken away from you. Have any of us reached this place yet? As everything else can be taken away by these bailiffs, that could come at any moment and remove the things that are not our own. We are reminded here of a subject previously spoken of, recalling that it has to do with the work idea that everyone is a self-developing organism, and must therefore make individual effort. Each person must develop themselves on all sides. So let's begin by saying that most people make no effort beyond their daily routine, because they think that if someone else is able to do something better than they can, then it is useless for them to even try to do it. This is certainly a common viewpoint in life. People say, "What is the good of my trying to do this or that, when others do it far better?" This is an entirely wrong attitude, as to make effort beyond this point is the beginning of individual growth. It is exactly this attitude that prevents people from having individual experience, or rather from growing in their own centers through personal experience. Let's try then to understand what is meant. If you, that is you sitting there now, think it is no good going beyond your present circle of daily life, then you do not understand what individual effort means. You may even ask, what is the good of trying to understand this or making effort beyond what I am doing at present? We have all heard that everyone has to make mechanical effort. Organic life makes conditions such that every rabbit, every fox, every animal, every plant, or every man and woman has to make mechanical effort in order to survive. However, conscious effort lies beyond this level. We can either practice this work or not. But need to understand that if we practice this work, now, at this moment, not tomorrow, then we are making effort beyond mechanical effort. The point of the work is to transform daily life. So it is said that if we merely listen to this work, but do not practice it, then nothing will change in us. Suppose, for example, that you hear many times that you must observe your different eyes and try not to identify with some of them. Of course, you can hear this day after day, and year after year, then say that you know all about it, and why is nothing else ever said? However, we have heard that the work tells us here to practice a certain definite thing on ourselves. Now, at this moment. Yes, at this very moment. With regard to the example given, the selection of eyes in ourselves and the rejection of other eyes. There is an interesting parable about this. It means on one level, that what we are speaking about is the inner selection and inner rejection of eyes. We have heard how often the work says, do not go with wrong eyes. This means that we must realize through self-observation that we have different eyes. The parable about the selection of eyes is as follows. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net, that was cast into the sea, and gathered of every kind, which, when it was filled, they drew up on the beach, and then sat down, and gathered the good into vessels, but the bad they cast away. See Matthew, chapter 15, verses 47 to 48. Think what it means to put the good into vessels. Have you such a vessel? Have you yet attained, through self-observation, any power of inner selection, of throwing away negative eyes, negative thoughts and emotions? Then keeping good ideas, feelings, and experiences after discarding all the rest. Think what it means to put the good into vessels. Have you such a vessel? Have you yet attained through self-observation any power of inner selection, of throwing away negative eyes, negative thoughts and emotions, then keeping good ideas, feelings, and experiences? Discarding the rest. It is right to say that we rest on something that is not ourselves, and which can therefore be taken away from us. It seems that this is the best way of starting to think more deeply about the question of what we really are. One person rests on his or her position, another on reputation, appearance, past vainglories and so on. Think what can be taken away from you through war or natural calamity. All these questions belong to what we feel ourselves through. What are you feel yourself to be? We thank God in all sorts of different ways that we are not as others, yet remember the parable about the two men who prayed. It was addressed unto certain men which trusted in themselves that they were righteous, and set all others at naught. Christ says, 2 men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee, and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee, that I am not as the rest of men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week, I give tithes of all that I get. But the publican, standing afar off, would not even lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but smote his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me a sinner. I say unto you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other, for every one that exalteth himself shall be humbled, but he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. See Luke chapter 18, verses 10 to 14. It was once said that one of the most difficult things for a man who reaches that stage of development where he begins to come in contact with the highest teaching, is that he has to give up his religion. He may feel himself a very good Catholic, a very good Quaker, a very good Protestant, a very good Muslim, and so on. He rests upon this basis, thanking God that he is not like other people, other non-believers. Yet in the highest stages of inner evolution, all such distinctions have to go away completely. Perhaps we can reflect for ourselves how this must be so, and this applies to many other sides. To become nothing, or rather to begin to realize one's own nothingness, would be quite impossible as long as we are certain that we are better than others by reason of reputation, religion, position, or materiality. Can we yet grasp this idea? No one can pass through this eye of a needle as long as they are rich. Remember what Christ said to the rich young man: "It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God." See Matthew, chapter 19, verse 24. What you base yourself upon is what makes you feel rich, and therefore what turns us all into camels with regard to the work. Talking on a different scale, try to see where you are easily offended, where you feel that you have not been properly treated. If you can observe this, you will see part of the basis upon which you rest psychologically, a part of the sand upon which your house is built. Perhaps, try to observe where and when you despise other people, thinking yourself superior to them, or at least think that they are inferior to you and therefore quite unimportant. This will show part of the basis upon which you rest. Again, try to observe where you feel flattered, where your vanity is gratified, your value recognized. This will show part of the basis upon which you rest. All this must be done practically through personal observation, and not discussed theoretically. When we begin to cease to have any ideas about ourselves, any pictures of ourselves, then and only then can we begin to change our inner state. To change one's inner state is to go on a long journey, a quest. There are physical journeys and there are psychological journeys. We cannot change our inner state if we cling to what we are based upon, just as one cannot leave their room if they persist in clinging to all the articles of furniture in it, and keep saying, "These are mine, they are part of me." You can come to a state where you go on very long journeys that do not exist in physical space. You may meet new kinds of people who live elsewhere. However, you cannot do this as long as you cling to yourself, cling to me and mine, cling to the basis that each of us rests upon in such an imbecilic and self-complacent way. People that have to leave a burning house often catch hold of something quite ridiculous and silly, such as a parrot. That is because they feel themselves by means of outer things. They are based on them. They have no feeling of themselves at all otherwise. A feeling of real I can only come to us when all such false eyes are diminished. All of us may think that we never speak like that man who prayed, "Thank God I am not as other men," but have you actually observed how often you do enact this, without actually saying it? How often you act from this basis? We mostly think that we do not do the silly things that we see other people doing, and conclude therefore that we are really better than they are, but we do not see the silly and mean things that we do ourselves. People's ways of being silly and foolish or mean vary a great deal. Everyone is different. The giraffe thinks the warthog is ridiculous, the jay thinks the nightingale has a wretchedly weak voice, and so on. Have you ever stood at a place in yourself, when you have been totally exhausted, or so chronically ill that you have experienced such a state? Here everything falls away, and you are quite alone, yet without fear. From such a state one can see what one is usually based upon. We can catch a glimpse of all the eyes that are constantly feeding on us like clouds of vultures, jackals, and insects. It is interesting to take the work from the standpoint of studying how to be free in oneself. Esoteric knowledge can set us free, but only through its practice. Recall the phrase, "The truth shall make you free." But how long does it take before the teaching of this work becomes truth for us? Even in the remotest sense.